Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Mr. Steve Arney today. He's from the great state of Oklahoma. And how's it going down there, Steve?
Man, it's going good. I'm having a good day. How are you today?
You know, I'm doing great. I'm working on podcast stuff, being able to talk to people about Bigfoot. It's a great day, and I cannot complain. And weather's pretty good up here in Iowa, actually. So it's not too hot. But, man, you reached out, and we've been chatting kind of back and forth a little bit. And it sounds like you've had some really interesting things that have been going on down there. So I'd love to kind of hear what you got going on there, man.
Yeah. So like Jeremiah said, my name's Steve. I'm actually from Amarillo, Texas. I moved to Oklahoma 11 years ago. My wife and son, he's a Texas fan. She's an Oklahoma fan. So it's always fun around here. So, but we moved out here 11 years ago. And, from being from Amarillo, I've always hunted and fished. My Papa Turner taught me the love of the outdoors and the respect of the land. Always keep it better than you found it, right? If you see trash, pick it up. That actually drives me crazy, but I won't get on soapbox. So anyway, so I passed that on to my son. He's now 33. It's amazing how fast time flies. But shout out to him. He did 8 years in the Navy, and very, very proud of him. And so anyway, I've also got a 29-year-old daughter, a 19-year-old son, and yes, I'm the idiot that has a 12-year-old daughter too. And so it's always fun. But when we moved to Oklahoma, it was like moving from high desert, if you will, to a very foothills, mountainy, giant oak trees. Dude, so seriously, forgive me, I call everybody dude. When my wife found our place, she asked me if I'd moved to Oklahoma because her daddy lived in the city and he was starting to get down in health, right? He was at the age where he was losing his health. So I said, look, I've got tons of family there. I love Oklahoma, so let's go. But you cannot talk me into moving into the city. Too many people, too big, too crazy. So been country all my life. We bought 10 acres. And Jeremiah, to give you an idea, it's a mile off of a 2-lane highway on a dirt road. And then our place, you drove through 5 acres of oak trees to even see the house. And so it was like a kind of a big S to drive through the oak trees and then see the house. And I looked at her before we even saw the house. I said, I sure hope you like this place because we're buying it. And we did. And it was paradise for me. All right. So there was a little country house there that was built incredibly well. Everything was, I did a little construction work. It was all built on 2x6. It was an old farmhouse, but just beautifully done with a little potbelly stove in it. And so anyway, the house needed a little work. We set in on doing that. But here's the deal. Even though I was still part-time working at that time, if I have my way, I'm going to be in the woods. So immediately I was in the woods behind our house, which this is something that I've never heard anybody really get into. But I think that this has a big reason for having so many Bigfoot sightings in Oklahoma, so many encounters. so many, a lot of my encounters are just things I heard, not saw, is our house backed up to, it teardropped down 3 times, if you can imagine that, behind the house, into the woods that I made into my little deer hunting area. But the last teardrop that leveled out into a valley was the Trail of Tears. Okay, and most people don't talk about that. The Trail of Tears was a horrible time in America. I'm half or not half, I'm sorry. Let me restate that. I have Cherokee blood in me. My great-grandmother was full-blood Cherokee. On a little sidebar, I think you ought to start taking notes of how many people that either know or are friendly with natives this deals with, because I just think it's a big part of it.
It's a lot.
Well, the Trail of Tears, it is.
It's a
huge,
lot,
man.
yeah.
Well, the Trail of Tears, I mean, our history is being lost to us because they don't teach it in school anymore. As far away as from Georgia, maybe even in Florida, probably in Florida, they pushed Native Americans, and the Cherokee always wanted to be known as a civilized tribe. They wanted to get along because they knew if they didn't, what would happen probably. So they always wanted to be a civilized tribe. Well, it didn't matter when gold was found in Georgia. Most people don't realize that there's a lot of gold there. When gold was found there, they pushed the Cherokee and all other natives into Oklahoma. Okay, and when I say pushed, I mean it. The cavalry was pushing people on foot in the winter, whether they had clothes or not, whether they had good shoes or barefoot, whether they were babies or grandmas. They all had to walk to Oklahoma think about it, from Georgia, dude. So it was so bad that if someone died along the trail, which many, many, many did, you could bury them, but you couldn't put a marker on their grave. Okay? Total crap, total disrespect. But so like I say, keep that in mind. Our home backed up to the Trail of Tears, and it is a beautiful valley. And if you didn't know the history, the only reason I knew it is a gentleman that lived down there told me. But if you didn't know the history, you would have never thought about that. Well, the other thing about that is I'm fairly certain. I can't prove it, don't want to prove it, do not want to mess with it whatsoever, and did not when we lived there. There was 2 rock piles that were, if you can see an old Western in your mind where they would bury someone out on the prairie, that's exactly what they looked like. Okay? And so I want you guys, Jeremiah and the listening audience, I want you to start getting your hackles up, because they need to be up. Because this land was highly charged land. And when I say highly charged, it was paranormal, big time. But that'll get into the story a little bit later. So anyway, I get the land cleared. I'm so excited to have a beautiful piece of paradise. Borrowed a neighbor's tractor, started digging a pond, and got the pond done. It was never really big enough, so I hired some professionals to come in and dig it for me, and they did a fantastic job. Then I stocked it with bass, crappie, perch. It wasn't a big pond, probably 2/3 of an acre. But man, did it hold fish. I mean, it held fish, and they got big in there. And it was just beautiful. It was paradise to me. You got to remember that. This whole place was paradise to me. So anyway, the first year didn't really have anything happen, but the second year, here's where it goes. And now I'm going to pre-warn y'all to pre-plug your ears a little bit, because this is going to get a little loud. All right? And so, Jeremiah, you may want to turn your speaker down. I don't want to blow anything.
All right. Oh, boy.
But so I'm hunting. I set up, what I did was I cleared about, including those the stony area, I cleared about 1.5 acres of land. I did not touch those stones. There's no way in the world I would. I didn't move any trees that were near them. But around that, I cleared about 1.5 acres of land. I had a tractor, and I sowed in a winter wheat spot every year for the deer. I promise you, the critters down there ate better than I did. And by the way, I only took what I needed for meat when I hunted. My granddaddy taught me, and I'm very serious about this. If you're not going to eat it, you leave it alone, right? You don't hunt just for the sport of it. You don't kill unless you need to eat. And I fully believe that. By the way, I'm very much a Christian. Played music and did that for years. And I got to be an honest person. I played in the bars in all the wrong places for a long time and toured, did all that. Um, so I was very involved in our local church. And by the way, this is in roughly the Macomb, Oklahoma area. So, Jeremiah, if you want to map that out, if you head south out of Macomb, you're going to hit Asher, Oklahoma. You're going to hit Ada, Oklahoma. Then you're going to hit Antlers, Oklahoma.
Yep.
I've heard all these names on your show. Okay. So, and by the way, just side note, something for y'all to look up later. Look up the Asher Bigfoot fireman video. It's on YouTube. And this did happen. Okay. This guy was just he was teaching people how to do a controlled burn because he was a fire chief. Dude had no intention of showing anything about Bigfoot, wasn't even on his radar. He just said, this is how you properly do a controlled burn to keep your place from burning up. And in the background, someone put on YouTube, hey, what's up with the Bigfoot running through your video? And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, there's nothing like that. I'm just doing a controlled burn. And then he went back and looked at it, and he's like, oh, my God. And, dude, there's like a 8 or 9 foot tall. You can't make it out clearly because of smoke, but you can see something that big. And this one was slender. It was not a bodybuilder from what I could see on the video, but 8 or 9 foot tall running. And here's the other reason that I tend to think it's Bigfoot. When it's running, its upper body doesn't jog up and down like ours. Its upper body is smooth as silk. Its legs are moving fast, right? And he's not pumping his arms hard. And so it's not us. It's not a human being, whatever it was. So anyway, get back to the story, but I want y'all to go look that up. It's a neat video. I am setting up to do an archery hunt. Now, I'm disabled. I can, praise God, I can still walk. But I've had multiple back surgeries, and I've also broke my neck to prove I could do that. So I'm setting up to do a early October crossbow hunt, okay? And I've got and it's funny, you change your places. I don't prefer to hunt in a elevated blind unless I have to, because my legs are still there. If I have to climb, I can, but I'm not real steady at it. Too many back surgeries anyway. So I get in there. I'm so excited. This is my first or second time to ever hunt there. And I'm in my ground blind in my chair. Now you got to think this is old man hunting. This is not young, strong man that's out busting brush and all of that. This is when I'm older. So I'm in my ground blind in my fold-out chair. I've got a little kind of a, if you will, coffee table, end table thing sitting beside me where my coffee sits or my soda, whatever, water, my crackers. I mean, dude, you got to do it right when you're old. So I'm setting up, and it's getting to be the magic hour, and anybody that hunts knows what I'm talking about. The sun is starting to set. It's getting cooler. By the way, in Oklahoma, it's dadgum hot till like mid-November. So it's getting cooler. The mosquitoes are kind of leaving me alone. And now brace yourselves, folks. I'm just going to do it the way I heard it. And I'm just so excited to see a deer. And I didn't even realize at that time that the woods were really quiet that day, you know. And when I hunt, 99% of the time, I'm using a crossbow. I'm not hunting with a rifle, shotgun, anything else. Um, and so normally I'm hearing things in that ground blind, especially after being in it for 2 hours. And all of a sudden, I hear um, this sound. Okay. I heard that, and I'm like, what? Dude, my hair on my head stood up. I ain't got that much hair. My back stiffened. I started tingling. And you got to remember, I've hunted all over. I've hunted in Colorado. I've hunted in New Mexico, all over Texas. I've never heard anything like that in my life. And so I won't do that again because I know how much it hurts to get that loud on speakers and stuff. So, but I heard that sound, and it seemed like the sound was so loud that it hit me in the chest, right? And immediately I got fearful. And that doesn't make any sense. I don't get fearful. I'm not saying I'm big, bad, and brave or nothing like that, but dude, I've been in the woods. I've been way too close to way too many bears, whether fishing, hunting, or in my time of gold mining and stuff. And so I don't get scared that easy, right? And I heard it directly below me. You got to remember, 3 tiers down, trail of tears, and then the little river runs back through there. And by the way, there's no houses for probably 3 miles in that direction. Okay, it's only woods, it's only river, it's only cattle. There's one rancher that lives one valley away, kind of back to the south. And so get all that in your mind. I heard that sound and every hair on my body stood up. Then I heard it again, and it was a half a mile down the valley. And now here's the deal. Here's what I want you to understand. That time between the first and the second one was probably 3 minutes at the very most. Now, if that was a human being trying to make his way through the woods, he's not going to get a half a mile in 3 minutes. He ain't out there running, right? And then I heard it again, a mile and a half down into the river a minute after that. Then I heard it again right back up by me. Okay, and now here's the thing that it freaked me out really bad. I got out of my blind. I'm not going to lie. I got out of my blind, and I've got about 200 yards to my back door, maybe 300. I go up, and we had a back porch back then, real nice, pretty wood back porch. And I go in the house, and I grab my wife by the hand. I said, come out here. She's like, what do you want? I said, no, seriously, I need you to come out here right now. The thing was still calling. She heard it too. Okay, and it was that loud, and it was still calling. And I said, you're hearing what I'm hearing. I'm not going crazy, right? And she said, yeah, I hear it. And I said, okay. The next night, I go back to my blind with a lot of trepidation. I really kind of sort of wasn't sure if I wanted to be in there or not. And sure enough, I heard it again. And I'm like, I'm out of here. So I go back. Here's the thing. I take more risks than most people. Is why I've got so many back injuries. The way I broke my neck was I got bucked off a horse and then I rolled a tractor. Okay, so I take more risks than many people. But at the same time, I ain't stupid. I'm not going to go see what I'm hearing with it moving that fast. And Bigfoot had never been on my radar. I'm a novice. I don't know anything about it. I'm from the Texas Panhandle. Okay. So that's the first experience. That's the first time I heard it. Well, then it moved away. Now, I want to reset the stage. This was in October, mid October. I take a nice buck that year, and which is rare. I normally don't. Normally I just take a doe or whatever, but God blessed me with. As a matter of fact, I sent you a picture of me with that deer. Um, and for the next year at the same time, here we go again. It's doing the yoo-hoo, and it did it for 2 nights in a row. Okay. And Amanda and I just started calling it the yoo-hoo because that's what it was doing. But it was doing it exactly like I explained. And it moved way faster than a human being could through those woods and through that area. There's really thick areas back there, and then there's areas where ranchers have cleared it out for cattle, and so a man could get out onto the plains of the area, if you will, and if he was sprinting as hard as he could sprint, he might be able to do that. But I want to ask you this: if he's a mile and a half away, and I still hear it loud enough to not want to go near it, is that a man? Can a man make that much noise? Because what I did, what y'all heard, is still only, if you look at it on the decibel scale, maybe a third of what it did. Maybe half, maybe. And dude, I've played a lot of music over the years. I've got amplifiers that are as loud as a jet airplane, so I know volume. Okay. And so that was the first 2 years. The third year, it was an unseasonably dry year. Didn't hear nothing. Thank God. I didn't want to hear nothing. And so I was able to hunt. And by the way, I'm kind of like anybody else. Once that thing goes away and I've forgotten about it for 2-3 months, I'm back to doing my normal thing. I'm traipsing around in the woods. And if I shot a deer and I had to go into my neighbor's land to get the deer, I did it, never thought once about it. And his land is so thick, even though we're only in the foothills now, his land is so thick, you can get in there and get lost. It's a 30-acre parcel, but you can get lost in it. And you really got to remember your directions to be able to move in, or you're going to go the wrong direction. So there are, like that gentleman said the other day, was it Mr. Whitehead or Whitefield, or Oklahoma is so much thicker than people give it credit for. And if you get much past Oklahoma City, which Macomb is about, I don't know, 60 miles east of Oklahoma City and then 20 miles south. You get much past there, you're getting into some pretty serious hills. And they're all the foothills of the Smokies, is the way I see it. So anyway, it didn't bother me to be in there. Then this is what happened. Year number 4. Okay. I had just had a back surgery, one of many. It was in the fall. I wasn't happy about it because I love to hunt. But I'm sitting on the back porch, not doing anything but trying to recover. I don't hear the yoo-hoos. Okay. My own theory on the yoo-hoos in the fall, I don't think the things have to travel to live. I think they travel to mate. Now follow me on this. If it's a young one looking for a territory to grow up and be an old one in, right? I think there's a lot more of them than people say, but I also don't think there's that much interbreeding going on, if you will, because they're a very smart creature. So I think it's kind of like us when we're young and we're virile, so to speak. We're going to go out and do whatever to look for a mate. Now, sidebar, any ladies that are listening right now, I have a saying that I always said to the church kids, and you got to remember I'm country, so this is how I talk. Don't go looking for a thoroughbred in a pasture full of jackasses. Just sidebar there. So think about that. You'll understand what I'm saying.
Right.
Don't go to a bar and expect to find a good man or expect to find someone who's always going to be by your side. People only change in dire circumstances. That's my whole point. So anyway, get back on track here, Steve. It's in the fall. I've had surgery. I'm not moving real well. That year became the year of COVID, okay, which is a whole other story. But before all that happened, we start hearing. Now you got to remember where we live. I used to travel for insurance, right? When I was working part time, I traveled the nation. We had conferences in Northern Carolina. Guys, if you ever get a chance, do a drive trip out to Northern Carolina. Some of the most beautiful country you will ever see in your life. But so I traveled a lot, and I'm a farmer at heart, a lot more than a cowboy, even though I've rode horses, raised cows, all that. And so I love planting trees, planting gardens, doing all that kind of stuff. Well, I'm out on the road, and I called my wife, and I said, honey, would you mind going out and watering my trees that I planted? Because it's brutal hot. This was before the surgery. Brutal hot. And if you don't water them, they're not going to make it. So she's out there watering, talking to me on the phone. I'm in Tennessee or somewhere. And she went, oh, there's a bobcat. I went, really? Now, you got to remember, Jeremiah, my wife is from the city. City through and through. She is not a country girl. So this whole way of life had to scare her to death. But I said, is it the squatty fat one or that tall, slender one? And she said, well, he's pretty tall and he's got a long tail. And I went, what, do what? She said, yeah, he's pretty tall. He's not giant big, but he's got a long tail. I said, honey, I want you to continue with the water hose, and I want you to back yourself all the way up to the house, turn the water off, go in. Don't go back out there. She's like, what are you talking about? I said, that is not a bobcat. It was a juvenile mountain lion.
Oh, wow.
She's so city, she didn't know. And I said, and as we're talking, I said, what is he doing? She said, well, I don't know. He kind of walked up on a hill, and now he's laying up beside a tree, and he's watching me intently. I said, yeah, get out of there. And so we have mountain lions in the area, right? I know, and not a lot. Now, there is also black cougars over there. If you go on Facebook and look up the area, there are pictures of a black cougar by a dude's trail camera, and I happen to know the guy, and he texted me the picture. So they're there. But we start hearing this winter or fall evening when I can't hunt and I want to hunt, we start hearing a deep growl, a guttural deep growl, followed by a large calf. Now you got to remember, I've got neighbors all around me with cattle. Okay. So you know what a baby sounds like. You know what a yearling sounds like. You know what a 1.5-year-old old calf turn into a cow or bull or whatever. You know what they sound like. This is a large calf. If I had to guess, and this is a pure guess, he was 1.5 years old, just by his sound. And Jeremiah, the poor thing was being ripped in half. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. It was screaming as loud as it could scream, being ripped up. And I wanted to go check it out. And my wife grabbed me by the neck and said, you ain't going nowhere. And she's right. I just had back surgery, couldn't walk well. Everything in me wanted to go and try to help that calf, because that's the kind of person I am. If I know something like that is being torn up, I want to go help. And she wouldn't let me. And hindsight 2020, she was so smart. If she'd have tackled me, I'd have just laid there. because I had no business in those woods at that time with my surgery. So this thing was being ripped up, and I knew it was being ripped up. You could hear it bawl as it was being torn up. Okay, now I want you to think about this. A year and a half old, if I'm anywhere near close to right, let's say it's a yearling cow, heifer, calf, whatever, steer, if he's been cut to butcher, that thing, a yearling is going to be about 1,200 pounds. Anywhere from 800 on a small side, which these were beef cattle. I don't think anybody in that area had dairy cattle. These were beef cattle, anywhere from 800 on a small side to 1,200. That's about the size range. Now, here's another thing to put in your head. A bull elk weighs 800 pounds. That's the muscle structure, the bigness of that calf at that time, okay? And I didn't go down there. I didn't hunt much that year. Neighbor actually brought me some deer meat. Very good neighbor I had to the north of me. Just awesome human being. And so come about spring, I was really feeling good. I went down and checked the fields and did all of that. Well, here's the other thing. I'm dog rich, which anybody that knows what that means. My wife and daughter that came over here are, if they hear of a dog in trouble, it's now my dog. Actually, Darren called me one time. He said, "Hey, we got puppies," and I tried to hang up before she could hear, right? But she heard it, and we got a dog. We still have her to this day. So I have 2 Weimaraners that are hunters, okay? And over there where we live, they roamed the woods every day. That was their thing. Nobody cared. Everybody knew them. My dogs didn't mess with cows. They knew better. And that spring, Jeremiah, and I'm not kidding, those dogs started bringing up the bones of that calf. And I was right on the size that I thought it was, because they brought up, basically, if you can picture the ham bone where it connects to the hip socket. If you took and spread open your hand to where you're catching a softball, that's the size of that ham bone knuckle that connected to the hip socket. That is not a small calf.
No, that's
right.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big animal. And they started bringing up bones to it. Now, the gentleman that ran those cows, I heard him and his family out running their horses and their 4-wheelers and looking for all their cows. I heard them out doing that, and I was listening intently to their conversation to see if they found the kill site. They didn't find it. You got to remember, at that time, I was still not able to move real good. So that was the last thing I heard that really stands out in my mind. So I had basically 3 instances. Now, I'm going to tell you this too. In my mind, if you've ever watched shows like Alaska, The Last Frontier, is a really good one to think about. When they have an 800-pound calf, sometimes that calf can survive a grizzly bear attack. Oh, now I'm talking about real ballsy calves, and forgive me, that's not a bad word. If you're a singer, ballsy means you sing really good and proud and loud, right? If you've got a really a calf that's going to be a good one, they can survive a bear attack. They actually filmed one of their calves that had a bear had been up on his back and torn into his back strap, is what you call them in the hunting world, on both sides, and you could see 4 claw marks on both sides, and that animal should have died, and he survived. Okay, so those calves are a lot stronger. Think about a young man at that point in life. They're strong at that point. They can survive, and I would doubt that even a mountain lion would go after that dude. right? A mountain lion will go after a small calf, a young calf. And as a matter of fact, when the calving season's on, there's cowboys out there saddled up with 30-30s waiting on the coyotes to come in after the brand new babies. Part of cowboying. And not only the coyotes, but the mountain lions too. But I don't think, in my mind, even a mature lion would go after a calf that big. Now, I never saw the kill site. Like I said, my dogs drug the bone up. There was rib bone. There was the hip bone. My dogs are like, they hunt on their own, even actually better than when I hunt with them. They'll bring up squirrels that they've hunted and they'll stack them like cordwood. Now, I know a lot of people are going to have a problem with that, but dude, it's the wild. It's what happens out in the country. All right, I'm just being real with what happens. So now here's where it gets interesting. This is another area that I want people to perk their ears up. We did a lot of stuff, my church and I, for the community. Okay, and I'm not trying to beat my own horn here. There's a reason for this. We fed the kids at the school a lot, and I'm really happy that I was able to be a part of that. So the school people knew our worship leader at our church really well. He was a school teacher at one time. I was the assistant worship leader. Anytime he had to go somewhere, I stepped in and took over and loved my time there, dude. We were a growing church after some tumultuous stuff, doesn't matter. But anyway, the school invited us to a back-to-school barbecue, small town Oklahoma. I'm going to tell y'all, if you're in the city and you're thinking about moving to a small town and you're worried about, oh, what about this or what about, just do it. You're gonna meet people that for no other reason than just being good-hearted people, they want to help. They want to do whatever it is to help you, because when trouble comes, you'll help them. That's how people look at life, okay? And so I've never met a kinder area of people than I knew there, ever, up to this day. And so anyway, the worship leader calls me and he says, hey, dude, the school wants us to do a back-to-school barbecue and sing along and all that. I said, great, let's go do it. So the group goes out and we're doing this sing-along. Well, then they wanted it to be an authentic camp-out experience for these kids. The kids in the area, there's a bunch of poor kids in the area. They just want them to have a good time as much as possible. Okay? So we set up to do that, and we're doing it. The kids are singing along. We're doing country songs, gospel songs, you name it. And it was so fun because the kids were really enjoying it. And then came the campfire time. Okay. You gotta understand that I'm what is it? I take people at face value. Until you do something that tells me that you're not my friend, I'm going to consider you my friend. And I don't mean strangers, if that describes me at all. So the guys start telling stories, ghost stories and such. Well, they asked us, do y'all know any? And dude, I know tons of them. I don't even want to talk about all this stuff I know, especially not to kids. And so I'm like, yeah, I know a few. And then one of the guys yells out, tell a Bigfoot story. And, okay, I want you at this time in my life, I knew, because I had really dug into those sounds that I heard. I started researching, and I knew what made those sounds because I'd watched enough video to know if you listen to the Ohio sounds, some of them are similar to that. And I actually called a guy on one of the podcasts years ago, and I gave him that sound, and he said, oh, yeah, I've heard that before. And so, but I'm real trepidatious. I didn't want to just blurt out, yeah, I know what that is. And so one of them's like, don't you know any Bigfoot stories? And I'm kind of still looking at him, and another man that I don't know from Adam, one of his kids was there. He said, well, he just hadn't lived here long enough to know any. He'll know him if he's lived here long enough. And so when he said that, I went ahead and told the Yoo-hoo story. And one of the guys in the audience was shaking his head. Yes, I've heard that. Okay. Then one of the guys came out in a Bigfoot costume and scared the kids and ran them around and all this stuff. And they just had a good time with it, and we went on. The whole evening wasn't about Bigfoot by any means. But one of the kids came up to me afterwards, and he said, please do that sound again. I want to hear it. So I did it again. That long. By the way, every time I do that, my dogs are looking at me like, what's wrong with you? So anyway, then COVID happens. Our house burns down.
Oh.
Well, it was a blessing in disguise in the long run, because my wife and daughter didn't want to tell me that there were paranormal things happening to the point that we had a pastor friend of ours go out and bless our home. We had homeowners insurance, right? I hated losing that house because I loved it, man, with a passion, but there was something there. And by the way, I don't want to get it too much into paranormal unless you just want me to, but a person lived there before us that invited that stuff.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Well, and here's the deal. I am very much a Christian. We talked about that. Now, I believe in all the fruits of the Spirit. The church we were going to at the time didn't practice all that. Didn't matter. They were good people. They were our friends. So none of that mattered. But I was raised by my mom had trouble. So my granddad, my dad, my aunt and uncles, that's the only reason I love music and the outdoors. All of those people raised me. My granddaddy is a Pentecostal pastor that went to the reservations and preached out in New Mexico. And one of my uncles actually lived out there for a long time. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing a silver and turquoise ring that my granddad gave me that was made for him by a native medicine man out there as a thank you for coming out here and teaching us the gospel. So I was raised full Pentecost, all of that, So I fully believe in spiritual things. Here's the deal, guys. If you believe in the good, you got to believe in the bad, because it's all real.
Yep.
If you believe in God, you got to believe in the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's good and there's evil. Both. You invite what you want in your life. Now, I don't know why, but I feel kind of led to say this. When I was 14 was the first time that 15. First time that I ever experienced paranormal. In Amarillo, Texas, living in the house we were living in, east side of town. Lightning storm came and knocked out power, right? My dad's in the shower. Now, my dad did not believe in anything like this. Dad's in the shower. I'm in the living room. I've been a hard worker all my life. I'd already earned enough cash to buy my first pickup. So my pickup's sitting out there beside Dad's. And power's out. However, it was a full moon once the storm passed. Okay. A black mass starts coming down the hallway, and I see it clear as day, dude. It's like, just imagine someone, it's not thin as a cloud. It's not thick as styrofoam. It's thicker than a cloud. I know that's weird, but that's what it was. But it was black, and it was coming down the hallway, and I could see it clear as day, and it was coming into the living room. I ran through it, which is stupid, but I ran through it, and I hit the bathroom door, and I said, Dad, there's something out here. You got to get out here. And he said, oh, you're just seeing things. He didn't believe any of that, didn't want to hear it. That was just how my dad was. And so I turn around and look because I'm in the bathroom in that area, not the bathroom, but near it. And it turns around and it starts coming back at me. I ran out of the house and I spent the night in my pickup. They could not get me out of my pickup. I went over and talked to my Papa Turner about it, and he said, "You just saw your first glimpse of something evil trying to mess with you. And you got to pray in the name of Jesus and cover yourself with the blood of Jesus to keep that stuff away." You're right. If it wouldn't have been for that, I'd have never known what to do when things like that happen. But now remember, I'm part Cherokee, okay? I've always had a giant high respect for Native people. I don't know their ways enough. I wish I knew them more. But I've been blessed to know some in my life. And so now fast forward out to this land. I've got pictures that I can send you of things that happened on that land because it's so weird. I had deer cameras set up around my hunting field, right? I would, on one particular picture, you see my hand going to release the camera card, and it takes a picture. And 90% of that picture is my hand. Well, one of my neighbors was over, and I was showing him the different deer. And that picture of my hand came up, and we had it on my computer, so it was a decent-sized screen. And I just went past us. That's just a weird picture. And he said, no, go back. And I go back, and if you blow up to 10% of that screen that's not my hand, there's streaks of light. And when I say it was a sunny day, okay, bluebird sky, but there's streaks of light between the strength of a naked light in your house, without a lampshade, and stronger than that were just kind of weird, oddball coming down, almost kind of like lightning. And in those streaks of light, there are faces. And you can make the faces out, and they are native faces. Now, I don't know why they're there, but they're there. Well, actually, I do know why. Trail of Tears. Okay? My wife would go down there in the evening. She loved to take pictures. Her and my daughter loved sunset pictures. She'd take sunset pictures. She said, "Dadgummit, there's another green thing in the picture," and there's orbs. The land was highly charged. Now, my son came to hunt with us one time, and I said, "CJ, when you're in those woods, what do you feel like? How do you feel?" And he's like, "Dad, I can't explain it, but I'm at more peace there than I am anywhere." Now, he did 8 years Navy and saw some things that were horrible, had to do some things that were horrible. And he said, "But when I'm in those woods," and I don't want to bypass that. That's the PTSD thing is so real in those guys' lives. I have so much respect for them. It's something they battle that I'm a non-military member, my dad, my son, my youngest son's fixing to go military, working at it. And I don't know that. I don't know the hurt that they've seen, but I know the pain of that kind of thing. I don't know the pain of seeing a friend die right before me, right in front of me. I don't know that. I'll never be able to understand that. But anyway, with all that in his heart, when he's hunting in those woods with his bow up in a tree, he said, "I'm at more peace there than I am anywhere, and I can't explain it." And I have the exact same feeling. I'm at more peace in those woods than I am anywhere. So I told you our house burned down. This was right at COVID. I went in the hospital with COVID. They tried to intubate me. I told them, "There's no way I'm going to let you intubate me." And every time I was in there for 14 days, very close to death at one point. And every time the nurse would leave the room, I'd get up and I'd walk around the room. I just wanted out of there, but I had some underlying things going on, pneumonia, other things. And it was a bad struggle. Well, our house had already burnt down at that point. We're living in a one of my good friends, well, the music leader, he had brought his RV out there for us to live in. We're living in that. And it was a very cold winter, dude, very hard winter. I'm weak from the COVID thing, so I'm still in the hospital. My poor wife is out there trying to handle, remember, city girl, trying to handle putting propane tanks on in 15-degree weather. She ain't built for that. She don't know what that's like. But you got to remember, this is paradise to me. This place is paradise to me, even though I know there's paranormal things. And by that point in time, she and my little girl had already complained to me that they had seen things that they didn't like. I'll give you one example of that, and I'll move on. One time when I was out of town, my wife called me frantic, and she said, I think there's somebody either in our house, or because we had started rebuilding, or just outside the house. And I said, well, tell me what's going on. She said, I was sound asleep and something ran up to the foot of my bed and ran around it 2 or 3 times and then ran off and ran into our little girl's room. And I jumped up and I went, and there's nothing here. And she was frantic, dude. She was almost to tears. Her voice was shaky. I felt horrible because I was out on the road traveling. And we continued to build the house, and those things won't go away. Remember, we had the house blessed. Whatever's there is not leaving. We have an air conditioner man come over, and it's his uncle that owns the land back behind us. And so I asked him, I said, dude, I heard your uncle and some dudes out there on horseback and four-wheelers looking for cattle. Do you know if they found them all or not? And he said, no, why? And I said, one of them got torn apart one night after I'd had surgery. I really wanted to go and try to help it, but I couldn't. And I just want to know if they ever found remains or anything like that out there. And he's like, no, but I'll find out. And you know, to this day, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if they ever found any remains or anything. I told him what I heard, and he said, yeah, I would have had to gone and looked at what was going on. And he's a young cowboy. I get it. But so anyway, we're trying to build. We're trying to make things work. The paranormal stuff will not leave my girls alone. And I bought a sawmill because I was tired of traveling. So I bought a sawmill, and now, dude, I've had over 20 back surgeries, not including my neck surgeries. I'm a moron. I don't have any business dealing with a sawmill. But I had tractors, I had equipment to lift the logs. You know, it was still very much hard work, but I loved it. I absolutely love milling trees, because that part of the state, I've always been a woodworker, and that part of the state is so loaded with giant oaks and white oaks. And oh my gosh, dude, there's so many trees. It's just such a fantastic thing in nature that they have there. And you could cut all the trees off of my land and they'd be back in 10 years. But it would take you 25 years to cut them all down. There's that many trees out there. And I would never do that anyway. I only took out trees that were dying or, you know, whatever. And I've got, to this day, I've still got black walnut. I've got white oak, black oak, cedar, you name it, that I brought with me. So anyway, I didn't want to hear that there was something in that house that wanted to hurt me. Didn't want to hear that because it was my paradise, right? Didn't want to hear it. Didn't want my wife to say it or anything else. I'm sawmilling. We're going to church. We're doing all the things that we do. And I'm out in the middle of a field and this is something I want you to think about. This field had just been rained on the weekend before. And I'm milling trees around this corner. I have my Dodge 4-wheel drive out there, still breaks my heart to this day. My dad had bought that truck for me. His last thing he did before he died. He was just a giving, good man. And that truck, for no reason, in the middle of that field, caught fire and burned to the ground. And there's nothing I could do about it. So, through the grace of God and the grace of really good family, I was able to get another truck. And I tried to just get past it, right? Just go back to work. That's always been my deal, is just go back to work. You'll be fine. Just work through it. It's all good. The girls were still saying, you know, these things are happening, and we prayed over it, and we've asked that the house be blessed. When I told you someone invited, I don't want to go too far into this, but I have a feeling there was...
Sorry, you just actually, your audio just totally went out in the last sentence. If you could repeat that.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, where did it go out? Let me ask you that.
You said...
when the truck burned down?
No, it was when you were about to talk about the history of the house, I think.
Oh, yeah. So, I apologize. I'm fairly certain, even though the lady that had the place, I'm fairly certain she had invited evil in. Maybe not on purpose, but it was there. Okay. They used to have haunted trails out there before we moved, and it was all in good fun, although a man died of a heart attack on one of their haunted trails.
Well, I mean, wow.
Dude. And so when that happened, they shut it down. So, okay, I don't want to go into much more detail on recording about that, because she's a sweet lady, and I don't want to go into any further than that. But,
sure.
But there was things invited in that shouldn't have been. Okay. And another little side note, she told me that she never went out after dark because she was afraid she would see a Bigfoot. Just a little side note there.
Oh, wow.
And she'd lived in that house. She lived in that house for 30 years.
Man. So she had stuff going on.
Oh, dude, absolutely had stuff going on. Absolutely. It was weird the way that area is set up. Tornadoes, you know, this is Tornado Alley.
Yep.
Tornadoes would form above that area and then go into Shawnee and destroy Shawnee. I watched it happen 3 times. And I always told my wife, well, she told us, honey, that they form above here, but they never actually hit here. Well, and then about a week later, one went right out our front road and tore up the road pretty good. Luckily, no one was hurt in that one, praise God. But anyway, there was evil there. It's the only way I know to describe it. My daughter saw black masses that would stand over the foot of her bed and lean over her. And so, but remember, this is my paradise. I didn't want to hear nothing about leaving it, right?
Yep.
Then I'm doing the chainsaw thing and cutting a tree. And quite frankly, there's another lady that was spectacular to us all the time we were there. Her name was Karen. Just spectacular people, her and her family. Her daughter, son-in-law, all of them, just fantastic people. And when we first moved there, she gave me a Skill chainsaw because she knew that I needed it out there, and I did. She said, "You don't have." She asked me when we first moved it, "You got a chainsaw?" I said, "Yeah, I got a Craftsman. Used it for years." She said, "No, that ain't good enough." And she was right; it wasn't strong enough for that area. And she gave me one. She wouldn't hear of me paying for it. She just gave it to me. So I was carving her a bobcat. And with a very good, I'm not sure if it was the same saw, but a very good Skill chainsaw. And so I don't know if you've ever worked with them or not, but you know, chainsaws have an emergency brake on them, right? Mm-hmm. What it's designed for is if the saw kicks back,
right,
it applies the brake and shuts the blade off. Now, if it would have been a lesser saw, I would say, okay, it was just a freak thing. But this saw, I want you to think about this. This saw had just been repaired back to its original, because I believe in maintaining your equipment. If you don't, you're stupid. You trust, you got to rely on it, so it needs to rely on you to maintain it. I had just had the saw in the shop. Everything was working perfectly on the saw. I started doing that work for her, carving that out. I used to, man, if you look at my personality, I'm an artist. Done artwork for years. I've got saw carvings all over. Was blessed, very blessed in Amarillo to have a lady do a news article on some stuff that I had done, and the Associated Press picked up that article. So I've got chainsaw carvings in like 30 states. And it's the way I look at it, it's a gift from God, just like other people are teachers. Art is a gift from God. Everything is a gift from God. So anyway, I'm carving that for her. The saw kicks back, and instead of the brake being applied, it speeds up, and it's coming right at my face. So what do you do when you see anything coming at your face? You put your arm up to block it, right? I put my arm up to block it, and it almost cut my right hand off. And I've got pictures of all that. It's really nasty. But it cut through all of my tendons on my right hand. And if it weren't for our youngest son at the house, luckily my oldest son and I had been on an elk hunt. And this is all, people say it's such a coincidence that this, that. No, it ain't a coincidence. It's what God has laid out for you in your life. Be it good, be it bad, be it indifferent. There's no coincidences. He had taught me 3 months earlier how to apply a tourniquet. If he hadn't done that, Jeremiah, I'd be dead. Okay.
Wow.
I was bleeding out fast. My wife wasn't there. It was just my youngest son and I. The whole time we're rebuilding this house, and I'm trying to keep things going. I'm bleeding out, so I wrapped my hand around my wrist as best I could to shut the blood off. He applies a tourniquet. I had to teach him how, and we got the blood to stop. Was able to call an ambulance. Ambulance came and picked me up. It's a funny story, but I don't want to take up too much of y'all's time. So anyway, every time I would think it was fixing to get better, it got worse until I woke up from surgery. And that's when I knew I was going to live. I didn't know I was going to live in the ER. I didn't know I was going to live when the ambulance got there, because quite frankly, all they did was make it worse. Each place I went to, they made it worse. And until the doctor stepped in and did surgery, I didn't know if I was going to live or not. And so anyway, after that, I'm trying to recuperate. My hand, now I've played guitar all my life. I play 5-6 instruments, and that, once again, is an art thing. I've got to relearn how to use my right hand. Thank God I'm left-handed, but I've got to reuse my right hand. I don't trust it. I can't pick up a glass of tea with it. So my wife looks at me and says, "Look, I know how much you love this place. We're done. You are now retired, whether you like it or not." And at first, I'm a redneck. There's no other way to say it. I'm stubborn as all get out. At first, I was mad when she said that. But it took about 2 weeks for me to realize she's absolutely right. We're done. So we put it on the market, put the place on the market. The house that we're trying to rebuild is not finished. But it's beautiful land. It's in a picturesque location. And so we get a buyer on it. We agree to a price. And we told our friends goodbye, which was very hard to do. I've known these people for 7 years at this point. 9 years at this point. And we sold out. We moved to Fort Cobb, Oklahoma, right? I love hunting and fishing, and by the grace of God, now I don't have to maintain the lake. I don't have to cut the grass in the fields. I don't have to do nothing. I just go out of my front door, drive a half a mile to the lake, and I'm fishing. and I've got good neighbors around me that love this place. So, you know, the Bigfoot thing, I know it's real. Like I said, I'm very much a novice. I'm not the guy that's going to tell you I'm a researcher, because I'm not. Um, but it goes to the back of my mind again. I completely forget about it. Basically, I'm out here hunting for the first year and fishing. And now that summer's here, dude, I'm ready to fish. Spring, I catch a lot of big striper and just blessed with a lot of fish. And, but there's this one area that everybody talks about. It's called Party Cove, right? Anybody that lives around here knows Party Cove. Well, like I've told you before, I don't really like being around a whole bunch of people that I don't know. So I fish at night, especially the further you go into the summer. If you don't fish at night, you ain't going to catch nothing, because it's just brutal hot, man. It's 100. Yesterday, our temperature was, you told me earlier you were up there and temperature was nice. It was all good. And I'm laughing in my head. Our temperature was 106 with the heat index. It was 112.
Oh my! Wow.
You walk out, dude. You walk outside, you need another shower. It's that bad. You just sweat profusely. So anyway, if you're not fishing at night, you're not gonna catch anything, and it's pretty miserable unless you're out there skiing and playing, you know, on a inner tube or whatever. So I'm fishing at night. This is in June. And the other thing about night fishing, that's for me, because I'm not good at it yet. If you're going to throw a cast net to catch bait to fish for catfish, jugline fish, it's hard to catch them during the day, especially if you don't know how to throw a cast net well. If you do it at night, there's millions of them. You can catch them just throwing the net and getting lucky, and it open a little bit. You catch 4 or 5. So that's another reason I like to night fish, so I can get my bait from my jug lines, right? I'm over in this Party Cove area. Now, let me describe this to you. Fort Cobb Lake, if I had to guess, is probably 5 miles long, probably at its widest 1.5 miles wide. Maybe 2 miles. I may be telling this totally wrong, but the Party Cove area is probably 500 yards across it, probably 250, 300 yards deep. All the partiers are on the left-hand side, so therefore I fish on the right-hand side, right? I've been there. It's at night. I've got one of my dogs with me that loves to go fishing. And I hear something growling. I don't really pay that much attention to it, dude, because I don't know, 25, 30 feet deep of water fishing, and I'm 70 yards off of the shore, if you will. And you got to remember, the cove is the cove, and then there's a big peninsula that comes out to my right. So I'm fishing, and I hear this thing growling. I really don't think that much about it because, dude, it ain't going to come get me. I'm out in the water. So, and let me say this too. I have good lights on my boat, but I don't have nothing that's going to shine 100 yards away. I don't have anything that good, and I need to get it, but I just don't have it. So I wasn't thinking about trying to spotlight anything. I'm just thinking about fishing. So I hear this thing growling. That goes away after a little while. I'm still fishing, got music playing in the background. My dog's there with me. And then to my left, about 250 yards away, at first I think, are you familiar with what a boat wake sounds like when it washes up on shore?
Not the most.
Okay. So when a boat wake washes up on shore, imagine a lot lower decibel sound, but imagine a wave crashing from the ocean to the shore, and it makes a rolling sound. Okay. I hear that sound, and I'm like, well, that was odd, because there hadn't been any boats out on the water except for mine that night. And I hear that sound. I thought, man, that's kind of odd. And then I heard it again, and then I heard it again, and then I heard it again. I thought, this is just odd. This doesn't make sense. And remember, I wasn't worried about that growling thing, right? Because I'm on the water, it's in the land, I'm not worried about it. I didn't put all this together until later, except for after hearing that sound of something washing up on shore several times, all of a sudden, dude, if I could have seen it, let's say it was daylight, it had to have been the size and the density of a bowling ball. Had to have been. Hits the water and makes a splash incredibly loud about 20 foot away from my boat. Okay. Now there's big fish in this lake, big fish, and they jump all the time. But when they jump, make a splash, and of course you hear it, you look, see where the fish is. This was no fish, because a fish wouldn't have hit the water with that velocity and from that high in the air. And it wouldn't have made the sound of a big rock being thrown in the water. I'm talking a rock that a man would have had the granny throw between his legs. You know what I mean? Like a granny pitch to a basketball or whatever. It had to have been that big. I didn't see it. I just heard it. It was 20 foot from my boat. My dog looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, buddy, it's time to go. So we left. And I thought about it over the next few days, and that sound of something washing up on the water also sounded like a herd of cattle walking through water. Kind of the same sound. And I heard you talking to a fellow the other day about one of them doing something over here to get your attention, to get it away from what's going on over there. Okay?
Absolutely.
I personally think that there was more than one walking through the water, and those things are too big to make a little noise. They're too big. In the water, they're too big to make a little noise. You're going to hear them. And then the thing, so that's to my left, 250 yards away, and then the thing throwing the rock at the water right by my boat was drawing my attention away from that, and he did a really good job. Now, I'm not like other people. I don't think I will ever get over the fear of these things, okay? And by the way, I think God gives us that fear for a reason. And here's another little ditty for you. I think that those things can project that to you. And I'll tell you why here in just a second. So all that happened. Me and Buddy got out of there and come home, and I told my wife about it. She said, don't you ever ask me to not fish again. I was like, yes, ma'am, I won't do that. And because she had all that in Macomb that she wanted. She didn't want no more of that kind of stuff. And so anyway, that happened. And that was about June 25th-ish. Okay. So it's not going to stop me from fishing at night. I am going to be very cautious. Ever since that day, I've been shopping for a spotlight big enough to put in my boat and look all around. I hadn't found it yet, but I'm still looking. And but I hadn't forgot about it either, right? So that happened June 25th-ish. So the 4th of July, this lake is hopping with people, dude. There's probably 10,000 people down here on the 4th, and I'm not exaggerating. There's people everywhere. So it's like, okay, it's time for you to let them have the lake, and you just kind of stay away. Now, I will also tell you, though, that's just me because that's just kind of how I roll. But the fireworks displays that people put on the 4th are phenomenal. It's amazing to see on the water. It's beautiful to watch all the fireworks. So anyway, one of my buddies called and said, you been out fishing? I said, no, man, there's way too many people to go. And he said, dude, the striper are running. You better get on them. So he talked me into it, right? And he wasn't able to go, so a lot of times it's just me and my dog. So me and my dog jump in the boat, and we take off out there. 4th of July, Party Cove on the left-hand side. There's literally 500 people over there. I'm fishing, I'm trolling, which you put a lure out behind your boat about 60 yards, and you just troll with whatever you think a fish will bite. And we all talk to each other. Okay, today they're on white, today they're on brown or chocolate, whatever the case may be. And so I'm trolling. All the people are over here doing their thing, partying, swimming, having a good time. And I troll that cove several times because I'm catching fish over there. It's a very fishy cove, even though there's that many people there. The other weird deal, dude, is the deer don't care that those people are there. The people are on one side of the cove. There's deer grazing on the other side of the cove, and I'm watching all this just snickering because me and other deer hunters spend way too much money trying to hunt deer. And when people are out there partying with their music going, the deer are out there like they're kind of rocking along. I don't know. But anyway, so the deer, they don't care that people are there. Now, another thing I've noticed is if you get too close and you don't have music going, the deer disappear. They don't want to be around it because then I think they've got their hackles up. There's something telling them, hey, this guy's watching us or something. We're not going to be around it. So anyway, the deer are calm. There's people partying. The deer are out drinking on one tip of the point. And I just happened to glance back in the woods, and it would be on the north side. I sent you that picture of the aerial of the lake. It's going to be on the north side of Party Cove. Now, I know that other folks may not be able to see this or whatever, but there's a map with a boat ramp on one side, and if you draw a 45-degree angle across that lake, that big cove over there is Party Cove.
Okay.
So the south side where all the people are doing their thing. The north side is heavily wooded back in the corner. And all of this, by the way, is public hunting land, although there's not that many people that hunt it. And so I'm trolling through there, and I happen to glance up into the woods because I'm just wanting to see if there's any big bucks or whatever. And this is the first time that I have a sighting, and this makes no sense because it's the middle of the day, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, freaking hot. And I glance up into the deep woods, and you can see from about 12 foot down up there, it's big oak trees, beautiful, but it's also heavily wooded. There's a lot of woods out on the lake, and then there's kind of a grassland area, and then heavy woods again, back up in there about 150 yards. And there one stood, dude. And I'm not talking about a deer, I'm talking about a Bigfoot. And now I'm about 200 yards away, so I can't make out any facial detail or anything like that. The thing was jet black. It was back in the woods, wasn't out on the shore or anything, but back up in the woods. And it looked like Hulk Hogan. It looked like the green dude, the big muscle green dude. I'm old. I don't remember his name right now.
The Incredible Hulk.
The Hulk. Yeah, sorry.
Nice.
Yeah. But bigger. Bowling ball shoulders. The thing had to have been, and now you remember this is from one glance, and I'm putting this together over time in my mind what I saw, because quite frankly I didn't believe it when I saw it. And I think most people, the first time they ever see one, they don't believe it, right? Their mind can't rationalize it. But I've been back to that spot 100 times, and I've looked in those woods, even with my binoculars, 100 times since then. And yes, there's some shadows in there, but there's nothing that's jet black, and there's nothing that's that big and that wide with a head on it. Now, this is a 200-yard away sighting, but the thing was, it had to have been 7-8 foot tall, and it had to have been 4 or 5 foot wide. I'm talking, I would never want to be close to that thing. So I saw it that day, just for a split second. And I mean, it was just a split second. I turn around, and I couldn't recognize in my mind what I saw, so I'm back to fishing at that moment. I couldn't recognize it. It didn't click until a day later. Dude, you saw one. You saw the shadow of one on the 4th of July. Now, here's the deal. People can believe me or not. It's fine. I don't care. But I know what I saw. And if I don't see something, I'm not going to say it.
Right.
So And it, like I said, it took me a long time for my mind to rationalize what I saw. But then back to night fishing about 3 weeks later, it's getting along into August now, and it's, oh my God, it's brutal hot. So if you fish at all, you fish at 6 a.m. until 8 a.m., or you fish from 9 p.m. until 2 a.m. And that's what I was doing. And I was back over in that cove. Now, here's the deal. There's tons of shad over there, which is our bait fish. And I'm casting a net with shad. I hear something on the opposite side of the cove do an owl call, but it ain't an owl. I've heard plenty of barn owls, and it ain't an owl, but it's doing a call. I didn't pay any attention to it at first. I'm casting my net. I've got 5 or 6 shad. The dog's with me in the boat. I cast it again. Couple more shad. And I don't know how to describe this or whatever. It quite frankly don't make any sense to me. But all of a sudden I got scared as crap. My legs started shaking. I got scared. And now when you're casting for shad, if you're no good at it like I am, you don't do it when you're in 8, 9, 10, 12 foot of water. You do it in 3 foot of water. So you're close to shore. Okay. This lake is a real sandy bottom in a lot of areas. And so it's really shallow in a lot of areas. And all of a sudden, dude, I got freaking scared. And I looked at the dog and I said, let's go. I've got enough shad. So I fired up the boat and I got out of there. And as I was leaving from across the other side again, I heard the owl call again. Now, here's the deal. Put this in your mind. All of the action that I had witnessed or been privy to has been on the far north side of that cove. I was on the far south side. I had no reason to get scared. None. But all of a sudden I started shaking and something in my head said, get out of there. So I got out. I've learned over my many years to listen. My son and I were up elk hunting, and he encountered a big bear at about 20 yards. We didn't have a license for a bear. We were bow hunting. And here's the deal. It was my son, my 33-year-old, that I've raised and had in the woods all his life. And he was yelling, hey, bear. But I didn't think it was him. I truly thought there was someone else up there yelling, hey, bear. But it was him, and he was so excited that his voice had changed. Okay. I think there's times in people's lives where there's adrenaline. Everything is telling you this is a very dangerous situation and you got to get away from it. And I can't explain why, but that's what I felt that night. Like I said, I've been within 2 foot of bears. I had one in the back of my pickup one time, dude. After a ham that we had in a cooler the night before, I didn't realize there was a bear in my truck, and I grabbed it from the edge of a pretty steep bank, and I pulled over, and I'm looking at that bear pretty much face to face. So I've been in some very scary situations. Wow. I dove in, by the way, just a quick side note, I dove in my truck. The bear jumped out of my truck, and I was scared to death. I rolled the window down. My brother-in-law was with me, and I yelled, hey, bear. And he immediately threw his stuff in the air and took off running across. I think the boy walked on water. He was running across the top of the creek. Right. And this bear ran off, and this couple come up and said, sir, did you know you had a bear in the back of your truck? I said, yes, ma'am, we met. So I've been in some crazy situations. But as I drove off, drove off with my boat from that spot. I heard that owl called 3 distinct calls and then shut up. And my thinking was whatever had waited across that area that night that the thing threw the rock at me was over right by me. In other words, not the big dude, but maybe his family members. I don't know how this works. Was over by me on the opposite shore where I was casting my net. And when he did those owl calls, this is just my mind. It could be wrong. It could be right. I don't know. whatever it was projected something to me and scared the living crap out of me, and I knew it was time to leave. And then I heard those 3 distinct owl calls as I was leaving, and it was not an owl.
So,
and
there's
that
actually in a minute, there's a question I want to ask you about that.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I mean, besides that, man, I raise a garden over here. I hunt and still plan to, and I love fishing the lake. But if you look up Bigfoot sightings in Oklahoma, there's been several sightings of Bigfoot around this lake. There's been several sightings in a little bitty town, I don't know, 5-6 miles from here, maybe 10, 15 miles from here. And then, of course, you got everything in the eastern part of the state. So if you did an aerial map of Oklahoma, all of that land from down there where the eastern mountains are down there, all the way through Macomb, where we used to live, all the way up to here, which is 2.5 hours west of there, there's mountain ranges within that area. There's creeks. My God, the lakes are everywhere. Those things could travel all the way through Oklahoma, and as stealthy as they are, they could avoid humans unless they basically wanted humans to know they were there.
Oh, absolutely.
And I personally think because of the other things that I've experienced in my life, it opened me up to be able to experience that. If that makes any sense, I almost think I've been marked in a way.
It makes sense.
You can be spiritually marked, right? In a good way or a bad way. And I believe personally, I believe I've had 3 or 4 guardian angels that have retired because of me and the way I act. Because they're like, dude, he wore us out, man. Yep. You know, I mean, all the different things that's happened in my life that I've been a part of. I've been so blessed in life and so fortunate in life. I had a debilitating back injury happen early in life. I deal with a lot of pain. But that's not what I choose to focus on. I choose to focus on the memories of taking a one-man bass boat down the Rio Grande River to try to catch a big fish and getting it done, and then almost dying on the way trying to get out of the river. I remember things like that. And I think God lets you experience things to shape you into the person that he wants you to be. But those are my sightings, man. That's what I've experienced, is those 4 or 5 things in my life. As far as Bigfoot's related, but people can laugh at me all day or say there's no way they're real, and I'm sorry, but they are. There's things in this world that we don't understand.
100%. I agree with you. Thank you for sharing those. So when you were over in Fort Cobb Lake, you said there was a point where you were like, you heard it's time to go. Now, did you actually hear something in your mind, or you were just like, had the vibe where it's like, all right, time to go?
It was just the vibe, dude. I didn't have I didn't have a mind speak. Although after listening to some of the folks on your podcast, I'm open to that. Like I said, there's things that we don't understand in this world, and for people to be smug enough to think that they know it all. Human beings are the most smug creatures. We're supposed to be on the top of the food chain. Give me a break. Don't go in the ocean. Don't go out on the coast of Florida and wade around too much in the ocean. You realize real quick you're not the top of the food chain, right? There are things in all areas of this world that can and will kill and eat you.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that the spiritual side of the whole Bigfoot phenomenon is so real and so tangible but you've got to be willing to open your mind up to it. And if you're not, you're not. You know, I'm sure there's people who are going to listen to this and laugh all day long, that dumb redneck. That's fine. I don't care. The things I've seen, and there's no reason not to tell people.
So what do you mean by the spiritual side of Bigfoot?
Oh, dude, come on. Anywhere there's native things happening, there's tales of Bigfoot that go back. These things go back, dude, for eons of time, right? And I've heard you ask guys before, what do you think they are? Well, I think they're descendants of Nephilim.
Okay.
The Bible says there's nothing new in this world. Okay. Well, I don't know why, but our government 100 years ago, or almost 200 years ago now, no, it was 200 years ago, I'm sorry, decided that we don't need to know that there was giants in this world. They've hit it all. Right. But if you dig into it, they're there. The whole red-headed thing, a whole bunch of people report seeing red-headed Bigfoots. Mm-hmm. When the fallen, a little bit of a Bible lesson, when the fallen decided to fall to earth and leave their heavenly positions, they mated with earthly women because they found them beautiful. Well, they're right, they are beautiful. But they mated with them and created giants, right? There's giant genealogy to this day. I mean, that's where, you know, we think 7 foot tall Shaq is freaking giant, and he is. Please don't misunderstand that. That man is giant. But not compared to what used to be here.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
way bigger stuff. Yeah.
Way bigger. And so, okay. Oh, also, there's something I hadn't even looked. You know what's funny is I took 2 pages of notes and I hadn't even looked down once. I hadn't read a single note. But there was a gentleman the other day talking about what happened in LaFleur County. Could I set the record straight on that a little bit?
Oh, man, where are you going to go? Yeah. Okay, go for it.
He didn't say anything wrong. I just don't think he knows the whole story.
All right.
The whole story of LaFleur County, that name LaFleur, was a chief. He was an Indian. He was a native chief. He was well known in that area in the early 1800s, 1850, or not 50, 1815. Okay. And you remember me talking about the Trail of Tears?
Mm-hmm.
His people were pushed, I believe, from Georgia, or South Carolina, Georgia, in that area, Alabama, pushed into Oklahoma. In 1815, they landed basically in LaFleur County down there. They set up camp, the natives did, and they set up their homes. It wasn't camps where they were going to live. They set it up. There were a few white people in the area at that time. They're just mainly fur traders, not much more than fur traders in that time. It's way, way early in America. Most people haven't left the East Coast at this point. And so anyway, they set up their tents. And now, I don't want to go too deep into this, but their particular people had a issue with the time of the month that women go through. We all know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually put an area outside of camp. They set up 2 or 3 tents for sick people and for women that was happening with. That was their tradition. That's the way I've heard it. Okay. And this is just when they set up everything. And by the way, I don't know any of this to be true. There's no way I could, but I've heard the stories down through time enough that this is what I believe. They started having livestock disappear. And when I say livestock, I'm whatever Indians considered livestock, which was dogs, horses, chickens, whatever, disappear and be gone. And people started complaining to LaFleur, who was at that time a young man, and he was well known at that point, but he was still a young man, and he was a leader in the native area. and he had a bunch of young men with him in their tribe. People started complaining that their livestock was being taken. And whoever did it was incredibly sneaky because they'd never seen them. Okay. Then all of a sudden, women started coming up missing. A few children started coming up missing. And so at that point, LaFleur and his men said, we're not putting up with this for one more second. Of course, they're native. They know how to hunt. They know how to track. So they start tracking what's going on. And they get to an area that they only described as absolutely gruesome, where there were parts of bodies laying around and in a pile, so to speak. And there was defecation around those parts. And they were furious because these men that had stole their women and their livestock had just basically cannibalized them.
Mm.
Okay, keep that in your mind. And I'm going to finish this story, and then I want to tie this to the Nephilim thing. They had cannibalized them, and so they started yelling and whooping. And now, by this time, they did have a few long rifles, what they called smoke holes, in the group. 2 or 3 men had them. Most were armed with their bows and their knives. And a Bigfoot stepped out. Of course, they didn't know what that was. They just called it a giant hairy man. And it charged LaFleur. He was in the front. Leaders are supposed to lead from the front. He was in the front. And when it charged, he charged. Right? They were so infuriated by what they saw that all fear went out the window. They were there to kill him. And there were, according to legend, this is all legend, there were 4 or 5 of the creatures. I'm not going to call them animals. I think they're part, but maybe not all. There were 4 or 5 of the creatures there. And LaFleur was tangled up. It was no fist fight. That's what I want to straighten out. He had shot the thing and wounded the thing and proceeded to go, and he thought he had killed it. He proceeded to go cut its head off with his knife. That was what he was after, right? He was wanting to show that he was the boss, and he was able to do that, right? When he went to do that, the thing tore him in half and tore his head off, tore LaFleur's head off. His men then set in on those animals and killed them. So according to that legend, they're flesh and blood. They set in on them and shot and killed until they killed them all, and reportedly cut one of them's head off and took it back with them. And that's where that man, that chief, was so well known that his name is the name of that county. It was no fist fight. It was a fight to live. That's the legend that I heard. And I've seen it told and heard it told 3 or 4 different ways. So that I just wanted to square that up. That's the legend that I've heard.
It's extremely interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying anybody else is wrong, but it was so much more than just a fist fight.
So,
but
yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
What kind of people did you hear your version from? I'm just curious, because it's pretty much grown in different areas, different ways.
I've Googled it, and I've read the legend that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've read different reports from different people, including a native report, not firsthand, but read an account of it from them. So that's the legend that I've heard.
Okay.
And there were only 1 or 2 fur trappers, white men, in the area at that time when that happened. And then LaFleur County, the name LaFleur County comes from the man who died in that battle. So it was an all-out siege as far as I'm concerned. And that is, by the way, dude, that's right there by Boggy Creek. I mean, you're only traveling 60 miles to Boggy Creek.
Oh, yeah.
Where there were run-ins such as that. Okay, so now I have seen and heard people say about gifting and leaving gifts and all that. Well, they're on a different level from me. I fully believe what they're talking about, and maybe someday I'll get there. I kind of doubt it, but maybe I will. Who knows what's planned? But I have a very healthy fear and respect of those things.
Oh, absolutely. I think
And
anyone should have that. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And not only do I have that fear and respect, but they were here before us, dude. They have every right to be here.
Mm.
They have every right to be here. And I personally, this is my own personal thought. When that thing was telling me to leave, or drawing my attention away from the waiting that was going on around beside me, I would have been a complete fool not to bow out and leave.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The thing is telling me, hey, and now look at it this way. What if it was you and your family? What if you were over in the woods and some old boy pulls up, parks his boat there, and you're cool with it, but then here comes your family that is not a half a mile, probably 400 yards away, waiting in the water. Well, that creature doesn't know if I'm friendly or a freak with a AR, right?
Exactly.
And so he has every right to tell me to get out of there. So I'm always going to. If there ever comes a day when something more than that happens, I'll let you know. But I'm going to respect them. I don't want to kill one. I hope no one ever kills one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need them to be discovered. As far as I'm concerned, our government probably already knows they're here. I don't need them to be discovered, right? I mean, other people want that. Other people want to lay a dead one on a table. That's ludicrous to me. Leave them alone. Let them do their thing. Now, if you want to go research them and learn about them, by all means, get after it. But if you want to go in the woods just to kill one, just don't, because you're killing a higher being, if it's even possible.
I think more researchers need to be aware of what could happen to them if they're going out and read. And I don't think people are aware of what could potentially happen. You can be affected physically, and you have to be aware that stuff can happen. To be honest,
dude, the infrasound thing.
Yep.
I that's what that was that night.
Mm-hmm.
That's that gut feeling that hit me. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I listened to that lady up in Washington. I'm not real good with names. Very pretty, long gray-haired lady. This very spiritual person, has been around them a long time, and she was hit with infrasound and described it, and that's what happened to me.
Wow.
She has researched them for years. She highly respects them. And I believe everything the woman says because it comes from her heart. You can tell it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the tie to the Nephilim, okay, they're called in the Bible the great men of old. Okay, or they did. It's very briefly mentioned in Genesis.
Okay.
The giants of old.
Mm-hmm.
And but so the fallen bred with earth's women and created giants. The whole reason for the flood was to thin that out, to wipe them off the face, right? Because not because they were here, but because they were eating and killing men. Anytime a giant was around, they were known to be cannibalistic. Okay, does that kind of check a box? Here's the other thing that I've read. So if you're going to read something, if you're going to dive into something, you just dive in. And so I fully believe in the Bible. Well, I've also heard of the book of Enoch. The book of Enoch.
Right.
Enoch goes and talks to the giants and talks to the fallen ones and says, this is what God is saying. and this is what you're doing, and he is very displeased with you. Therefore, this is what's fixing to happen, right? The book of Enoch really gets deep into it. Okay, well, those giants have always been said of those giants that they're redheaded. Okay, they've always been known to be redheaded. Now think about the natives that are from Arizona that had battles with redheaded giants.
Exactly, yeah.
To take over that land, or Nevada, wherever. I know it's out in that country, and I've been out there. It's a beautiful country, by the way. And then they found the bones of those beings, of those giants, where the natives. So here's the deal. This is what's funny. You know, people say, well, you can't really believe native stories. Oh, really?
No, you can.
The natives for years, the natives for years, well, they all say, well, it's all legend. It's all hearsay. Well, okay. Natives never wrote things down. They told it to their children in such a way that was so dynamic that it's still remembered 1,000 years later. Right.
Right.
So I believe that as much as I believe written word, because written word had to come from someone's mind. It didn't show up, unless you're talking about Jesus, who is the word. But so anyway, one of the things that those creatures were known for doing, the giants of old, was not only getting women from camps and capturing them, and even taking children, eating some and breeding with some. But one of the other reasons that God was so furious is they were also breeding with animals. Okay, most people have probably never heard that, and I just went off the deep end for some people. And so how far of a stretch is it to say, because if you look back on the hominid record, okay, how many different hominids has there been? If you look back, there are known 6 or 8 different subspecies of human over, I don't know, I'm not into the millions of years thing. I'm more in the line with the Bible. Over thousands of years, there have been different subspecies of humans. It's proven they found their skulls. So there's little bitty, 3 foot, 4 foot. Then there's big. There's a fossil record of different subspecies. Okay. One of the reasons in if I'm not mistaken, in the book of Enoch, I could be wrong, but the giants also, they took whatever they wanted. They ate whatever they wanted. They did whatever they wanted. So over time, did their offspring pass flood? Because if you read the Bible thoroughly, didn't David kill a giant, a Philistine?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Wasn't that past the flood? It was past Noah's day, way past Noah's day, and David killed a giant. When the Israelites took the land 2,000 years ago, the reports from Moses sent out 12 spies, Aaron sent out 12 spies. 10 of them come back and said, there's no way we can take that. There's giants in that land. We look like grasshoppers compared to them. Think about that. So how big were they? So in other words, even though the flood thinned out all of that dramatically, there were still giants in the land after the days of Noah.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely in the Bible. Yeah, 100%. I mean, multiple. Yep.
Well,
absolutely.
They're redheaded. They're redheaded. They do what they want, when they want, how they want. Think about the natives in Arizona, Nevada that had to chase them into a cave after being killed and slaughtered. A bunch of natives got together and chased them into a cave. The chief ordered that that big cave in Nevada. You can go look at the cave to this day, and there's still burn marks in there, by the way. The chief ordered the people to pile brush on that cave, and they burned them. They smoked them and killed them.
Yep, Lovelock Cave.
Lovelock Cave, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so dude, I mean, you start putting all these puzzle pieces together. Man, there's so much more to this world that we don't know, quite frankly, because a long time ago our government decided we didn't need to know. Although, if you go back far enough, Abraham Lincoln asked if there were still giants in the land. It's in his memoir.
Mm-hmm.
Theodore Roosevelt has an account of a Bigfoot up by Washington. It's in his memoir. So that was before they, whoever decided to take all of this away and nobody needs to know about it. All of that stuff's back there if you go back there and dig far enough. So, dude, to me, it's very connected to the natives. The natives, some people say at one time lived with them in certain areas. They worked with them in certain areas. But in other areas, the beings, the creatures, whatever you want to call them, were much more hostile and they couldn't. I don't know if that's demographical. I just don't know. I don't know how to describe that, because I know in certain areas up in Washington and in that area, there's people that have had very deep contact with them and live to talk about it. It's just part of their way of life. But if you go to Alaska, the same thing that happened in LaFleur County happened in Alaska. The exact same thing.
You talking about
maybe that
Portlock?
Portlock, yes.
Mm-hmm.
The exact same thing that happened in LaFleur County happened in Portlock. And the natives up there, the Alaskans up there, still talk about it to this day. That happened, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, somewhere in there?
Yeah, it's quite a while ago. But it is...
So, but anyway...
It's very interesting when you start to connect things together like this, for sure.
Oh, it is. So here, earlier in this, I told you to maybe get a chart. How many people have native DNA that deal with them? And I know some that deal with them don't. How many people are spiritually connected in more than one way? How many people that have had undeniable paranormal things happen? All of that lines up. All of it checks box after box after box after box. And I think also that these things are so much more intelligent than just an animal.
Absolutely.
Right. Honestly, I think that we don't know the intelligence level of animals, right? I've got a dog that's learned how to open a door that's shut. Animals are so much smarter and deserve so much more respect than we give them. And I'm a hunter and a fisherman, so, I'm a very weird person, I guess. But I've learned enough in life to know to respect things. And also, I'll tell you this, if nobody hears anything else from this, if you ever encounter one and you don't know what to do, you ask Jesus for help. If you're scared to death that something is going to do something to you that you don't want done, you say, in the name of Jesus, get away from me, and it has to flee. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I think that's connected too. So I think that there's so much more to this world that we don't understand. I would love to understand more. When I get to heaven, I will. So I've got a lot of questions. I'm too inquisitive.
Absolutely. Oh man, such an interesting conversation, and a lot of stuff I didn't know we would get there, but it's very, very cool. And Steve, just thank you for chatting and hanging out. And if people have also been having issues in the same areas that you mentioned, definitely feel free to reach out or put those in the comments for sure.
Yeah, I will. I'm no researcher by any means, but I'm not against looking into it deeper. I got to be honest with you, Jeremiah. I have gotten off my boat and went up into that point, which is it's kind of public land because you can camp on it, but there are people that own homes way back behind it. So I'm not going to journey deep into it.
Mm-hmm.
But quite frankly, I've been too scared to journey deep into it. Right.
Oh, sure,
But I'm going to ease up in there and just see what I see if I see tree breaks, because I expect to see things. Now, footprints, our land gets very hard around here when we've been in a drought for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So those are come and go. I mean, if you just have to be lucky to get one. But tree breaks and things like that, I almost expect to see. I really do. So if I see those things, I'd be glad to report it. And I'm on Facebook if someone wants to look me up. Doesn't bother me whatsoever. Just be kind.
Right. Well, that's all you got to do.
Me out or anything.
Just be kind.
You're exactly right.
But man, keep me in the loop with if you find anything. If you do take a closer look. But man, Steve, it's been fun chatting with you, and thanks again, man.
Oh, dude, you're more than welcome. I love doing it. It's fantastic to know that there are good people with good hearts that look at these things inquisitively and just want to know more, right? And I haven't actually did a handshake and met, but I've seen so much of that on your channel that it's just very encouraging, man. So keep up what you're doing for sure.
Well, thank you, sir. Yeah. And thanks for chatting today, Steve.
Yes, sir. You bet.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. Shame on you.